Yeah. Yeah, spring.
Yes, it is. So I can go ahead.
Okay, perfect. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. It's nice to see. Thank you all for engaging in professional counsel and the processes that impact your working conditions. And thank you all again, for being voluntold, or however you got this gig. It's exciting to be past the exchange of letters point, step one, and be able to actually get into the proposal phase. So we appreciate the work that you do here at the table, and I know there's a lot of behind the scenes work. John gets lots of number crunching that lets you be prepared for this. So today we'll start with the retirement insurance plan and VERP annual report. And then we'll do committee reports and proposals, and then that'll probably be about it for today. You're good.
So we report out these numbers each year. Discussed as the VERP, which is Voluntary Retirement Program, policy TBOD. And kind of to summarize it, if you look at that policy, and I believe it's around page 11 or 12, you have to have submitted for retirement, applied for capers. You have to have been here 15 years in order to be eligible, and must be 5 to 3 years from full Social Security benefits. I did that backwards on purpose because all of VERP is really a sliding scale. It's maximized if you go 5 years out from that Social Security date. If you go, then it's if you go 4 years out, it reduces down. And if you go 3 years out, it reduces down further. Then you're no longer eligible. Similarly, the maximum in all of the tables that you'll find in the policy, it could start at a cumulative 68% of the base contract. But if you work through those eligibility years, it could drop down to a 55%. But as you see in the policy, there's a variety of factors. And it's paid into a 403B, and that's for some IRS regulation reasons. Employees obviously can withdraw from that once it's in the 403B plan. I cannot tell you when it began. I've gone back to 2011-12, which is roughly when we believe the other program began. Right last year, our cost for the book was $338,855. And you can see what it's been all the way back to 2011-12. When I talk about a current obligation, if we've paid this year right now, we owe retirees $4.9 million in various stages. They could be in the last payment of 5, could be in the second payment, and we haven't added the new retirees to it. So it's hovering about what's called a $5 million liability. That's what we currently would owe. The health retirement arrangement, or HRA, which Angie, I know you used a term that's in this policy, and all these years I've never really done any research on it, but you call it the Retirement Insurance Benefit Plan because it cites it. This is not one of those. If you do an AI or Google search, you'll say no, that's related to a 403B. And HRA stands alone. So as we do our work every year, we got just a little bit of cleanup in that policy to change those words to health retirement arrangement. Well, like I said, over the years, nobody's noticed that. This one's governed by GPOA. And at the time of retirement, the accumulated illness bereavement leave is converted into a health retirement account. And it can be used to pay for premiums because you're in an early retirement situation. You probably are staying on our plan because you're not Medicare eligible yet. And you can receive up to 420, a conversion on 425 unused days. So it's based on a 1/10 what the Board of Education's financial participation in health insurance is. So it's $85. It's administered by a group called Suracy. And last year it was $1,334,803.20. Current obligation on this one is about $533,000. It's less because if you think about it, if I retire early, I'm going to probably rip through that fairly quickly because I got to pay that premium. If I retire late, it could take a while because this is funded as people ask for reimbursement. To unlike the VERP that if the VERP were to go away after 5 years, it's all paid out. This we have no way to really measure. It's all up to how quick Clint would bring in his receipts, or is he doing expensive things that's going to deplete his? And the third party group tracks in each one of those individual accounts and monitors all of that. This was done. I remember when I first got here. One of the reasons we went to this is the policy had a conversion for sick leave days, a payout. You pay FICA on it, and we pay FICA on it. And you put it underneath one of these arrangements. Both sides saved on the Social Security tax and the payouts. It was kind of a new initiative the IRS had started about 2010. So I guess to summarize, we've paid out last year $2.3 million on the VERP and $1.3 million on the HRA.
Clarifying on the VERP, if someone is more than 5 years from Social Security eligibility, I think they can still get this. It's just they only get it for 5 years of that.
I do not know the nuance of that. Did you know that?
I think if someone is more than 5 years from Social Security eligibility, I think this policy gets them for 5 years, but then it just doesn't carry them all the way to Social Security. I think that's. And then I understand this may be a difficult number to pin down.
Sure.
But has there been any attempt to calculate, like, because one of the motivating ideas of VERP is obviously to also be a cost savings on the salary. And is there any concept of how much it's gaining us back on that?
We really have not done that to try to figure out, okay, on this individual, this is what who replaced them, and now it's just something that's never been tracked. I'm trying to think of how we do it, but.
We've got some questions.
Sure.
I know some of these questions are not answerable right now. We want to make sure that people's questions are kind of getting in the room. One question that came in today is just to clarifying so that we're all operating from the same understanding. What would be the date by which a 1-year notice for 27-28 would need to be given? Our understanding is right now, these will be available for 26-27 because of the 1-year notice. So the question would be, when would that notice need to be given for 27-28?
Basically June 30, right? June 30.
This is kind of along the lines as Eric's question, but is there like specific data or like a budgetary breaking point that kind of led to putting VERP and the retirement benefit account, the HRA, I'll say if I use the right term, being considered?
No, not really a breaking point other than just the budget challenges that we're under and continue to have. Just anything related to compensation or anything in our budget, everything was trying to be put on the table and analyzed.
Yeah. not being, having sped fully funded is having a lot of impacts.
Very much so.
Do we think that there could be a viable path to keeping these benefits?
Everything, to me, everything's kind of a trade-off. It's a matter of, you could keep this, what else gives in order to do that. Does that make sense? I mean, keep this, health insurance up, keep this, change class size. That's why all of the various policies and things, we just thought we have to at least notice them so that, you know, a good conversation about what is the desire, which is the route we should go.
Some of the questions was regarding, retention, people asking questions about, district considerations on, if we had VERP coming to the end of the next couple of years, for example, and we would have perhaps like a large number of our more experienced teachers leaving and maybe going to other districts. So has that been a consideration? I guess the stay factor.
Really hasn't been discussed. I'm not sure how you measure. It's one of those. It's kind of one of those mysteries. Our neighbors don't have these programs, and so how do you measure? Well, if you don't have the program, you'll have 300 people leave or nobody leave. We don't really know how to estimate, right?
How many people are, like, in a typical year, right, taking that?
I didn't look at it, but we could easily get that. There's about, right now, there's about 55 active people in the HRA. We're almost every retiree. If you had 125, 100 of them probably.
I was gonna say 100 would be my probably fairly close estimate, but we could give you numbers.
So, like, looking at the 24, 25 number, roundabout costing about 23,000 a head. That's a fair.
Well,
Back
it's
in
that
where-
sliding scale.
Oh, sure.
Some people may have only gotten 8,000 because they're in that low, they're on year 5 lower percentage, and some that just started to be much higher. So not much of a correlation to the head count.
Okay.
Another thing that's been asked would be if these programs were discontinued, would there be consideration of maybe something like a grandfather clause for maybe people within a certain amount of time of retirement being able to take advantage of those?
I get I'm not trying to dodge it. We literally have not had the conversation yet about what's it look like. What are the options? Other than putting it in the letter, we have any analysis or discussion.
I'll go ahead and throw out one more. Again, I think it's in line with some of the answers you've already given, but again, just in the interest of making sure those questions are being asked. Has there been any consideration on the cost of if the HRA were to go away and there might not be an incentive to save accumulated illness days? Has there been any consideration of the cost of people taking those days? And that's obviously the sub cost is more than the 8510 per sick day as a not a donation, but as a thank you contribution into the HRA. Any others? I appreciate the update. I know that our bylaws indicate that we have an annual report, but it does not indicate what is to be reported. So that's probably something like we could fix at some point. But I know every year we do this, It's kind of what do we want in this report? And of course, this year, that report seems to have more magnitude just with the state of our budget. So I appreciate you giving some of that history in those numbers.
Obviously, we're trying to avoid a lot of these things. I know one of the, I don't live under a rock. I know people are asking, well, where's the administrative cuts? Well, Dr. Reeves is leaving and Dr. Reeves is not being replaced. And there's a list of others, 2 in HR, 2 in business and finance, that as positions are opening up, we're just, whole system is going to have to adjust in order to backfill the lack of funding. So just thought I'd throw that out there because I'm sure it's on people's minds.
I appreciate you. Any others? Okay. We'll take a little bit of time for our committee updates before we get into 2 of our proposals for negotiations. As a lot of you know, some of the work of professional counsel goes through committees, so we can get people with different job categories, get their expertise in the room, get a wider variety of input. I know appraisal, we were scheduled to meet March 26th, but didn't get a chance to do that. So our next date that we will meet will be April 30th. We've been working on getting feedback on a variety of items about the pilot appraisal system, including one that's been a little tricky is there is a requirement to have like a goal as part of appraisal, which means not that any of us are against goals, but that is a requirement of the system. And how that goal gets inputted like into Frontline or whatever system we have, especially when you're a career educator, since do you want to put the same goal in there 3 times? So we're getting some feedback from career educators on that. And I think the intent would be that we would bring some sort of recommendation from the appraisal committee. Our thought was maybe sometime in April, but since we're not meeting again until April 30th, and that is likely not to come in April. Anything else, Rick, that you want to add from appraisal committee? All right. Extracurricular academic support. All of our committee members, both on the administrative side and certified side, deserve a big round of applause. And I'm going to give an extra round to our ECAS folks. Eric Hansen co-facilitates that with me. And when you, as the handouts come around for extracurricular academic support, you will notice that there's a lot on here. We had, I think, 19 proposals, which I don't think we've had that many proposals before. So we had to kind of work through a little bit of how do we go through this much information with the seriousness with which each proposal deserves, because each proposal is brought by either a certified staff member or an administrative staff member. And our meetings are on Teams for 30 minutes at a time at 7 a.m. It's great time to be meeting everybody. So perfect. So as you all are getting that, the first page, front and back, is just a listing of all the proposals. And you will notice that when information could be provided about cost, that was provided. A couple of them that I'll just kind of mention. You'll notice number 3 was about special education caseloads, and I doubt very seriously anybody in this room would argue that our special education educators have a lot on their plates. But quite frankly, when it came down to calculating what the cost and even how you would determine caseloads, that was very much beyond the scope of our extracurricular academic support committee. So that is included in here, of course, but that's why it does not have some of the calculations. We just did not have the expertise for that on that special education teacher caseloads rather. I also wanted to point out number 9 and number 10, which goes on the next page, the reading interventionist. These proposals were specifically for lead interventionists at middle school and high school. And you'll notice that high school has 2 amounts. And that's because currently many, perhaps all, I'm not sure, of our high school interventionists do have some time within the day. It's not the amount of time that's needed for the job. So that's why there's two amounts, kind of like we have BLT with a supervision and without a supervision. So I just wanted to kind of provide that. ECAS facilitators, that would be our extended absence facilitator.
EAS.
Thank you very much for fixing that. That would be for our students who have extended absences. And we got a lot of really great information about how we're really struggling in filling those positions, primarily because the amount that they are paid in this district is perhaps behind others in surrounding districts. Do want to point out that that is tied to the tutoring rate in the negotiated agreement. So while the proposal was specifically about ECAS,
EAS.
thank you. It's because there's too many E's and S's. Thank you. You just keep doing that for me. It would likely apply to all of the instructional tutors unless we did something, somehow separated them.
Can you remind me what EAS stands for?
EAS, Extended Absent Services. There you go. There's the S. So those are our students that are, gone for a really long time, and they have a tutor essentially come to their house or another location and provide them some of the instruction. I'll note on number 16, the video production, that is one of the proposals that came in, I think, a couple years ago. And the creator of the proposal was Matt Johnson. And during the course of the committee, he pulled that, not like, hey, this isn't worth it. No. He pulled it just because of some of the budget items. So I wanted to highlight that that is not going to go off the radar. He just pulled that. The remaining ones that are listed have been previously submitted. That's kind of why they're in a different font there. Yeah. And in the committee this year, we did have a conversation about how we think that it would be wise that once a proposal has been active for 3 years, hasn't been substantially revised, it's just been in our files for 3 years, it would become inactive. And then if somebody wanted to resubmit it with updated information, of course that could happen. So that is just kind of the big view of everything. Ranking 19 proposals, perhaps is a bit of a bear. And we also had a conversation just about the budget situation we're in, which that conversation is an important one, but also perhaps may or may not be one that would be appropriate in the committee. So what we did next is we had people essentially rate each proposal, and you'll see on the next page, we gave a Likert scale. So score of 5 is this proposal was really thorough, and it absolutely needs to go to professional counsel this year. Of course, what professional counsel does with it is what we do with it. A 3 would be like, this is a complete proposal. It's not missing information. Not that it's not important, but just in light of the budget, maybe it's not something that has to go to professional counsel this year. And then a 1 is this proposal is incomplete, or maybe there's a lot of questions about the proposal just because of the nature of the calendar. We just couldn't get down to all of that nitty-gritty. So you'll notice each person provided their ratings, and you see those without names, but that includes both the administrative and the educator ratings on each proposal. And what we decided as a committee to do is to take the proposals that were essentially a 2.5 and above and rank them, because this body usually gets a ranking. And ranking 9 or 10 proposals is a lot easier on the brain than trying to rank 19. So that's why you'll notice that on the page with all of the ratings, some of them are highlighted. That's just the 2.5s and above. And then finally, we got to the ranking, and this is generally the piece that you all see. We kind of added that step in the middle just because we had so many. We decided that we did not want to ask our committee members to rank head middle school dance and cheer coach versus assistant middle school dance and cheer coach. We thought that that would not be beneficial for anybody. So you'll notice on the ranking, we combined the middle school dance and cheer. So we know they're two different proposals, but we didn't want to pit the two coaches against each other in any way. And then we went ahead and decided to do the same thing with the reading interventionists. Although you could maybe argue there's more difference there. We didn't want to like pit middle school versus high school because the core of the work is somewhat similar. So you see the rankings there, and then below it shows you the ranking as well as the makeup. Like you'll notice for middle school cheer and dance, the vast majority of the rankings were number 1 because it's showing that in the red. Okay. Anybody from the committee want to add anything? Any questions? Right. I imagine when we get to numbers, then we'll come back to this. All right. Next up on the committees would be calendar. We have a meeting set April 8th and April 29th. And of course, if our work is done before then, we won't meet those times, but we did make some good progress on those. Do you all have the calendars yet? Excellent. Thank you, Megan. Yes. So this is professional learning calendar. And is the bottom of that the school year calendar? In a folder someplace is our 27-28 calendar. I do have the 27-28 calendar in the professional council folder along with these other items. But we have so many. There it is. Get one more. The extras. Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. All right. 27-28 year calendar. I guess we'll start with that one. Clint, this one was a little easier, wasn't it?
Yeah, so this one would be next year, 627, and also previous year, not this year. This year was the outlier, obviously, with how early Memorial Day was. So this was next year's and this year, 27, 28, much simpler as far as working out without the early Memorial Day breaks. Winter break is more similar to what we've been used to. Everything else is pretty similar.
I remember we talked a little bit in previous professional councils about should a change to conferences be made, the earliest we could get it would be this school year.
Right.
And that would need to probably come to professional council by January of next school year.
So, yeah, so then we can adjust this one.
Yeah. So, but we have had to republish calendars before because of changes. But I think it is the expectation of not only our employees, but also our community to have that calendar out.
Yeah, we go ahead and have this one approved, and then we show whatever that change might be compared to adjust the calendar. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, this one does seem was much easier in that 7 a.m. Teams meeting, to be able to. The professional learning calendar for 26-27, so for next year, was a little harder to land, but I think the group came together and did a lot of listening and a little bit of adjusting. Like this year's calendar at the top, we have all the different types of professional learning and prep outlined. The yellow, the pink, and the green, the ones on the left side of the bold line, remember those all count as half student contact time. And then the items that are to the right of the bold line, the kind of salmon and the blue, principal directed activities and educator prep, that does not count as any student contact time, because there's not active learning or application. It's more you're going to work on what you need to, bonding activities. All of those things are really important, but they don't contribute to our student contact time. And I think the biggest conversation that we had, although we definitely had some conversation about what is the best professional learning like after spring break. I know that was a topic that we had, was really looking at educator prep at the beginning of the year through a series of unique events. Last year, we were able to have 2 full days of educator prep at the beginning. We had that flex day, and we had that work at your location day. And that did come about in a unique way. There was just unique circumstances that brought that about. And our educators really responded positively to that. So in the committee, we heard from not only principals, but also educators about some additional educator prep time at the beginning of next school year. And what we were able to come to recommend to professional council would be to have one professional, let me see if I can say this correct, one half day of principal directed during pre-service rather than 2 half days. And the switch off there would be that there would be 2 additional half days during pre-service in addition to the full flex day. So you'll notice the full flex day is blue. So on-site, off-site during that time, not during that time. And then there's a little bit of a menu that BLTs can kind of schedule in pre-service when each building does which thing. And the trade-off was rather than having 2 professional principal directed and 1 educator prep, we flipped them. There's 1 principal directed and 2 half days of educator prep. I'll stop talking to see if that lands.
And that came from educator voice on that committee, right?
Yeah, it came from educator voice, and it came from our principals saying, hey, what about this? What if we offer one of the principal directed times for that educator prep? One of the considerations was, the more educator prep you have, if you're switching it off with any of the other colors besides salmon, then you are losing student contact time. It's less than an actual student contact day, but that was one of the considerations of the committee, and that allowed that trade to happen without reducing the student contact time for the school or for the school year.
We're pretty tight on student contact time anyway. And we've seen the past year, this year we were lucky.
Yeah, and this year we were tighter than ever, but it worked out. So the 26-27 school year is more in line with what we've had in the past, which in the past we've still had to add minutes at that high school level. So I think the only thing I wanted to mention was the change that we made to try to further clarify, hey, we have new learning, district focused or building focused, and then we have that pink, the application, to delineate that more clearly so that we've got, hey, we're learning something, but then we have some time to also process it. I've gotten good feedback on that. And so we tried to maintain that. And hats off to Jenna and the learning service team for putting together a lot of drafts that considered that, because that was a good change, I think, for this year. Anything else for calendar? Okay. Benefits, we're still in the process of going through analysis of the bids for health insurance for 2000. And we always get great updates on usage and what's driving costs. I don't think there's really anything. Okay, yeah, because somebody likes to go through there. Anything else on the benefits committee?
Finalist presentations last week, and so now we're waiting for best and final offers from those companies, and then that's why we're waiting to schedule the next benefits committee meeting so that we can kind of get through those. So we'll circle back around and then be able to make some decisions from there. So there's always about 65 different things that you look at when
Yeah.
you're reading all of that.
Yeah, and I also did want to note, and this comes up a lot, but it's always important to note. We did talk in our last benefits committee a little bit about impact of legislation on even things like benefits. So it was very helpful. Eric Hansen explained some potential legislation on PBMs, which I think maybe did pass. Still trying to, and how things that happen in Topeka impact us in ways even beyond the funding sped.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Lots of them. So.
Okay. Conference committee, any updates? We've got a survey out.
Yes, we said that. I think that's really our only update is that we have the survey out. Do you remember when the end date for the survey is?
2 weeks.
I think we said 2 weeks, and I think it was the 12th that it was sent. So we're close-ish to the end date. So if the link is still active, then people can still submit, I guess. But we'll hopefully be getting that information officially.
Yeah, I know the link was still active Monday when I sent out a bargaining update. So if people are looking for that link in their email, they can search for my name. And it was also sent out, I think, through like a generic email the first time.
Yeah.
It wasn't like sent from a person.
Yeah, I know in mine, it got sent to my like focused folder. So there was that, but
Oh, the link is still active.
oh, okay.
So
Survey away, friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, so once we get that information, then we'll get the committee back together.
And is that an educator survey or a parent survey?
that one was educator survey.
Okay. And then one was sent to parents as well. Yeah. Mhm.
Things are happening.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I brought this up last time, and Clint and I kind of talked. We wanted to suggest a potential step forward on some variance language. We've talked a couple times about Mill Creek and our 2-year academies doing a pilot just based on some unique things in those programs to better meet their families' needs. And the pilot were both the educators as well as the families really good data on those variances. So our agreement indicates that when a variance has been piloted, I'll get that out in terms of programs. Then the next step is after you receive information on whether or not it worked effectively, that it could become part of the agreement. So what I would like to propose is sending the language to the principals and the ARs of those buildings / programs, and including you, Julia, and you, Rick, as the conference committee people, to have them look at the language one more time, and then have you all kind of make a recommendation to our group about like, where would this go in our agreement? Is it just going to be plopped at the bottom of the policy? Is there a better method to put it in there?
Mill Creek and PLC.
Mill Creek and the 2-year academies. Yeah. Does that sound like a potential way to move forward on that? Okay. Excellent. Unless I forgot a committee, which could have happened. think we're ready for proposals. Excellent. We'll do blackout days first and then elementary plan time. Yes, I'll work on that. You
It's
work on
already up. I have it.
all.
I have to do.
Just extra stuff.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to Blackout Day today. Just the title is a little foreboding, and I want to start by saying that we feel like currently the Blackout Days are a bit of a burden on both parties, on educators and on administration. And so we'd like to talk through that just a little bit today. And we also feel like reducing or maybe even eliminating Blackout Days would likely have a negligible cost impact this year as we negotiate with a tight budget, and it would have a very positive morale impact. So just a review, Olathe this year, as we know, faces major financial challenges. The district has done a great job sharing with the community that we have declining enrollment in Olathe schools. And we also have shortfalls in special education reimbursement at the state level, as we've already talked about today. And then now unfunded mandates like the cell phone ban, that kind of thing. So we're facing a lot of challenges. And so we feel like eliminating or reducing blackout days is something that would improve educator way of life, quality of life. And we are seeking things this year that will have a lower fiscal impact. And the next couple of slides show our blackout days, just some basic information with our contract. We have 187 days in our contract, and 55 of those are currently blackout days, which is nearly 30% of all days. 30% of all of our days are blacked out for PTO use. And on the next slide, we break it down a little bit more. 16 of those days are professional days, 15 are Fridays. And then in the months of August and May, nearly all of our contract days are blackout days. And before I jump into this information, and I'll kind of let the data speak for itself, I'll talk about it a little bit. I do want everyone to understand that we understand the district's intention with blackout days. The beginning of the year is really important for educators to be building relationships with students. At the end of the year, we have some students have more high stakes assessments, that kind of thing, and we just need closure at the end of the year. And before and after breaks, those times are really important as well, especially after a holiday. When students are recalibrating to the school, it's great to have a familiar educator in the classroom, and that's really beneficial. But we did look at some of the data that was shared with us in January. This is from the district, and we just looked at last year's data. The first column is just the number of average teacher tutu, thank you, the number of people, so not just educators. Who were absent on any given day, right? And then help me out with the second column then.
So the second column is on an average blackout day, how many people were penalized at that 2-for-1 based on data?
Yeah, so it's pretty small actually. So we're looking at percentage under 20%. So for August, for December, and for May, and for the year as a whole. And so we feel like the impact is not very high. So on educator behavior, so.
And I think like an important thing just to voice, although I think everyone at the table does know it, is primarily the thing that keeps people from putting in a sub when maybe they aren't feeling 100%, or maybe they want to get in and get that physical, but like the primary thing is they want to be there for their kids. That's the number one deterrent, and or they don't want to make things harder on their colleagues. We think that those drive educators when they have a choice, a say in being gone. Those have a larger impact than the 2-for-1. Is what I'm hearing, right?
So just in summary, we feel like, the impact of blackout days on educator behavior is pretty low. And then again, we feel like eliminating or reducing the blackout days, addresses the interest of educators who have to go through that process, filling out that paperwork, receiving that penalty if that's the case, right? And the interest of the district who have to go through the paperwork and then go back in and add that second day if an educator is penalized. And then just finally, reducing or eliminating blackout days would likely have a negligible cost impact on a year that's really, really tricky for us. So that's where we are with blackout days. And do we have paperwork already?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so what we did on this, rather than giving you a red line, is we just kind of went through and did Control F for blackout days. To let you know that, to kind of see the scope of the impact on the agreement. The main thing is there's a quick reference to blackout days in the section about consulting and training outside the district. If we were to land at eliminating blackout days, that would be a simple, just like get rid of that language. The most substantial portion is in the leaves language, obviously. And again, that would be just striking out the definition of blackout days. All of the other references are more like notes. And obviously this would not be the calendar, that would be in next year's negotiated agreement, but there's a note at the bottom of blackout days on the personnel calendar. And of course, the shaded areas, there would be shaded areas. The PTO absence request on Oracle would likely still exist, but there would be nothing about blackout days on that. The approved exceptions, that would not be necessary because there would be no blackout days. And then these two notes are just on the professional learning calendar. So again, just reference.
So I think with that, we're open to questions.
So just to make sure I'm clear on the proposal, look there, it's that we're trying to reduce it or eliminate blackout days. Proposal was actually.
Our proposal is
Proposal
limited.
changes are-
Negotiation.
Sure.
Can happen, like,
I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something.
I guess, of course, my concern is always our kids in the classroom. So if we don't have a blackout day, and I've seen your data, but I also know that the way you now currently get away from not having to have the 2-for-1 is to simply say that you were sick or it was an illness reason, and we don't ask any other questions. So how are we going to handle if we find that, oh my goodness, the day after a holiday, we've got a significant percentage of our staff who are gone and we can't fill subs, and we recognize that that's a burden on everyone else that's there. And so that's the thing I immediately think about is, what are we going to do in that moment when those kinds of things happen? And so I guess that's where I may be thinking about, has there been any thought to, having some additional safeguard, if you will, that if we see that, oh my goodness, we can already anticipate that this kind of issue is coming, that there'd be an ability to put a cap if that were to happen. I don't know if you guys had any discussion about that.
I think we'd be open to potential conversation about something like that, but really, when you talk about the people feel like they can just put in the form and say they're sick, to the extent that anyone's doing that, if they're doing that, they're doing it at the very last minute. So I would think that almost hurts your ability to plan ahead rather than helps you. Whereas if the day is not blacked out, then that same person, if that's what they're going to do, they feel like they can put it in, and people would be able to plan ahead a little bit more. I also think, I know we just got the sub-fill data, and thank you for that.
Yeah.
But what I kind of noticed right away on that is it almost looks like, because a third of our year is blacked out, you see some impacts on those other days that are not blackout days, particularly in November when those sub-fill rates are below 90% a lot of those weeks. Whereas if you opened up more of those days possible, you might spread out some of the.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I feel like it's like some of the questions John was answering earlier too, like, it's hard to predict and project
Yes.
how
Yes.
people will behave in different circumstances.
The fill rates did look good.
Mhm.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah,
by that.
yeah. Great sub-services department,
We do.
fortunate for, so yeah. I'm sure we'll think of more questions.
We have one last proposal.
Those are gonna come around. We, in this proposal, we're talking about elementary plan time. We just wanted to give kind of a basic overview of the changes that have happened in elementary plan time. So with the work of the elementary plan time committee that was led by Dr. Wheat and then Shelby Lewis, who is in the audience today, they helped us navigate prior to 24-25 school year. We had the 270 minutes of plan time for the A through E rotation. And we were able to gain an extra 30 minutes starting in the 24-25 school year, which then laid it out as 300 minutes per 5-day student contact week. So we just wanted to kind of give that background knowledge of that increased amount of plan time given to elementary educators. So as we talk to educators, we all know that time is the most important thing for us. We hear frequently that they feel there's not enough planning time for all of the subjects as we get new resources. Others feeling rushed with no breathing room, loss of time due to meetings or coverage or added additional duties. But we did see both in our negotiation survey as well as feedback we've gotten is hearing that educators value both the PLC time and plan time. They value them extremely and they don't want them to compete against each other. They know that both of those are important in our success of educating our students. So we didn't want that to go unknown. PLC is so important to us. And then we just had this quote given by an educator that we wanted to put here into this space. The person said, "We can't do this job well anymore with the time we're given."
And I'll just kind of add a little underline. I think that all of these bullets are relevant for all of our educators. But the pressure point at elementary, I comparing is not helpful because we all have our jobs. But I can't explain the pressure that I hear from our elementary educators on plan time. I think maybe in secondary, since you have bells, you know, I don't want to say that every secondary teacher always gets to plan time 100% of the time. But there are just some things about secondary that make that plan time a little cleaner. And it comes up in almost every conversation that I have with our elementary educators.
Yeah, so next what we've done is we took a month. So we took January of 2026 and we took an educator who's in our school district, and that educator has their 30 minutes of plan time from 8:15 to 8:45 on Mondays. That's their assigned day to have that 8:15 to 8:45 protected time. And then in their building, Thursdays are their PLC day. So just laying out that information that's specific to each educator in their building of when they have their PLCs, as well as which day they're assigned to have that extra 8:15 to 8:45 plan time. So what we then laid out is we laid out the A through D rotation throughout the month of January. Obviously no school on the 1st, and then professional learning on the 2nd and 5th, and then starting on the 6th with the D day. What we then did is we looked at this educator and listed how much plan time they had on each of those days. So you'll see on the Thursdays, they were at 30 minutes because they had a 30-minute PLC that day. So within that day on Thursday in their building, they had 30 minutes of PLC. We then see January 12th, we had a snow day, which we know snow days, we move on to the next day. So that snow day is kind of an outlier. And then we see Monday, January 19th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, that being off. Then on the right side, the column, you'll see the total amount of plan time minutes this specific educator got in that week. Was that the right word?
Yeah. The last column
The line.
represents the total number of minutes plan time that week. And I will say that like educator work principal on some creative ways of making that up. And because of the nature of elementary, it was not an ideal situation. They were going, it was just not ideal just because of supervision elementary. But I do want to point out that sometimes when things get in the way, there's a way to make that time up. I think what we're trying to do is propose something that would maybe help us not get in that situation more potentially.
So we were looking at the week of the 5th and then the week of the 19th, kind of knowing that 12th of the snow day was an outlier. That educator only had 210 minutes of plan time, whereas you'll see the week of the 26th, they had gotten that 300 minutes of plan time. And this specific educator was able to work, as Angie had stated, with their administrator to be able to kind of problem solve when there were 2 Mondays off in the same month and their morning of 8:15 to 8:45, 30-minute plan time was not there, just simply since we didn't have school, they were able to try to find a solution. But that kind of led us to where we are today. So our proposed language with this is currently we have the 240 minutes of plan time over an A through D rotation, and then 300 minutes over a 5-day student contact week. What we're proposing is that both of those are changed and they're the same of a student contact day week and removing the A through D. So as it will list, unless a variance is approved by professional counsel, all elementary educators assigned to teach full-time in an elementary program will have a minimum of 240 minutes of plan time, added languages in a 4-day student contact week, 300 minutes over a 5-day student contact week designated as individual plan time. And then the rest is still there. So our intention with this is to be able to have stronger language to help educators and administrators find ways to make these minutes apply in weeks where maybe we don't have all of the days in the week.
Any questions?
So could you go back to that calendar? So had we adopted this language and this occurred, what would we do?
That's a really good question, and I think one of the complexities of elementary is, of course, we have so many buildings, and not every building does everything the same way. One of the things that makes this difficult is that in some schools, I think maybe most of them, but not sure about that, educators receive that 30 minutes of plan time that PLC takes up, in the morning. You can have plan time one day before school to count as plan time, I should say. Oftentimes that is assigned by day. So let's say, I don't know, 5th grade, your Monday. So when we have that scheduled by the day of the week, and then we have, right, and so I think the experts in figuring out how to make that work are probably our elementary principals and our elementary educators. We are open to ideas here. What we were discovering is we were having some conversations about, well, what does that mean? Like, so really if it's a 4-day week and it's actually a B, C, D, A, then does that mean we get 240? What if it, you know what I mean? Like, does it matter? People were getting so caught up on the language.
Or if the week of the 5th, it started on a D, so D, A, B, C. Technically, that's not an A through D. And there were different conversations.
And so by the time we have that conversation, we're not all in the mood to have a productive conversation. if you know what I mean. So we're just trying to eliminate that
Yeah.
and make it more clear.
And we definitely feel that getting the right people in the room, because the decisions that can help impact how to make this happen in the buildings is definitely us sitting down with elementary administrators, Jill Smith, Liz Harrison, and them kind of thinking through now, let's look, we've lived the 24, we're now living the 25, 26. I think it was hard in the beginning because it's hard when you don't live something to see, are there any ramifications to that?
Yeah.
And so I believe that this language is a great step forward for us, but we know that it's definitely not the end. But it's definitely going to bring us to a better spot to where we're all understanding the language the same way and not having to first discuss, is it A through D?
The interpretation.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll come back with more
Yep.
questions.
Yeah.
on that too. Thank you.
Okay, proposals. Yes.
Are we gonna have any from the district side, or I'm new to this, so I was just curious.
Yeah, normally we would. We didn't notice a lot in our letter this year for obvious reasons. I think I talked about this before. So obviously the appraisal one, we can't bring that until after the next meeting. 30, that's where we forgot any of those last.
So I think maybe looking at next week, I think we probably be prepared to bring maybe another proposal or two, so we can at least get the proposals out there.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again.
Well, we can have our questions prepped.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone for being in the audience. This is exactly what we want to see, educators showing up, wanting to hear the conversation.